Good morning, everyone. We're just going to wait for a couple more people before we begin. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I think we'll make a start. Okay, today's learning is dedicated in memory of Ami Bas Aryeh, Paul Casimir, Yirmiyahu Yechiel ben Moshe Eliezer, Shlomo Yechiel ben Moshe Eliezer, Ben Sion, Ben Yitzchak, Ari Ben Shimon, Leah Basfaivo, Avram Mordechai Ben Moshe Kapner. Let me just plug in the headphones so you can hear me. Hope everyone is well and had a wonderful Shabbos. We certainly did. It was lovely in Woodside Park, getting back to some normality with Kiddush and everything else, and hoping that you can all join us soon in reality in the community. So this week's Torah portion, which we're going to discuss now, begins Behaloshca. We're discussing about the lighting of the menorah by the high priest, by Aaron, and by subsequent generations. Let me just plug this in. And when Aaron there's a Rashi, there's a commentary at the beginning. So basically every day Aaron would light the menorah, okay? The menorah which was in the tabernacle, it was there both in the tabernacle and in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple. So when he lit this menorah, so Rashi says in this week's commentary says as follows, that the Almighty gave Aaron and his descendants this honor of lighting the menorah as a consolation. Aaron was rather despondent. He just saw in last week's Torah portion, we discussed it, about the various princes of each tribes. And each of them were involved in the inauguration of the tabernacle. They were there at the outset, like cutting the red tape. So they brought sacrifices that inaugurated and established the tabernacle. And the priests were not really part of this. And therefore, this week's portion, we're told Aaron got, as it were, a consolation prize. And the prize was that he and his descendants would light the menorah. And the question is, where is the consolation? That at the end of the day, the inauguration has been, you weren't part of it. So whatever happens afterwards, the fact that you're going to light the menorah, how does that in any way, make up and substitute for the missed opportunity of not being included and involved in the inauguration, in establishing something? I guess it's like, if you were to imagine that you established a new shul, you built a new shul, and then you've got the opening of the new shul, and you've got the chief rabbi, and you've got the Teresa Villiers, and everyone is there for when we bang the mezuzah onto the front door. And somebody was not included. And then, a day later, you send them an email and you say, don't worry, we want you to have a special honor, far greater than the honor that was bestowed upon the officiants that came to open the shul. What you're going to do is that you are going to be able to open the shul and to help run the shul every day. So the person will turn around and say, that's very nice. It's a nice afterthought. But at the end of the day, I missed it. I wasn't included. I didn't have that honor. So how in any way was getting a subsequent honor for him and his tribe in any way a substitute? And our rabbis tell us through Rashi that in fact, the idea was that throughout the generations, Aaron and his descendants would light that menorah. They would light it, and we know that in particular at the time of the Hasmoneans, that menorah was lit, and that was the miracle of Hanukkah. And the idea, I think there's many different angles to this, but one particular idea is that those moments of inspiration, those public moments that we're all familiar with, where there's tremendous pomp and circumstance, and everyone is focused on that particular moment when something begins, the inauguration of something, they are momentous, they are inspirational, but that inspiration comes and very quickly it disappears. Aaron was involved in lighting the menorah. The menorah symbolized the light of the Torah, the education, the imparting of our traditions and passing it from one generation to the next. And therefore, when Aaron lit that menorah, it wasn't just lighting a menorah. It was taking a whole concept of the tabernacle and bringing it to life in everyone's lives, because the Kohanim, the priests, would be the teachers of the Torah. So I think there is, many angles to this, but let me share with you a story. Sometimes we think we're missing out on something, and we can be involved in something which seems rather innocuous, right? And then later on we realize that in fact the rather insignificant thing that we're involved with actually has profound impact and influence. Listen to this story, it's unbelievable. So Rabbi Moshe Levi, who heads an organization called Chazak in London, so he was invited to speak at a dinner in Manchester, and he was driving up to Manchester in his car, and all of a sudden his car broke down. And when his car broke down, he was on the side of the road, and he thought to himself, I'm not going to make the dinner. So what did he do? I didn't know about this, but apparently you can go on Waze and you can notify, I think, your contacts that you are, where you are. And he sent a message, and lo and behold, one of his long lost friends that he hadn't seen in maybe 20 years from yeshiva, he made contact with him. And the message that Rabbi Levi sent is that I'm on junction, I'm traveling from London to Manchester for a charity dinner, and I'm at junction, just at the end of junction 17. I've broken down, the AA are coming, but my cars are, finished. I need to get to Manchester to speak at this dinner. Can anyone help? So what happened next was unbelievable. He gets a message from a guy that he has not seen in over 20 years. He saw him last in yeshiva, and he says, I'm actually just at the beginning of junction 16, and I'm coming up the motorway, and I'll be able to give you a lift. I'll be able to pick you up. So Moshe Levi waits, and sure enough, his long lost friend picks him up. He's got someone in the car, and all of a sudden he gets in the back, and they're on the way. Now, what's incredible is the guy that's driving the car is actually, I think he had some connection with security at the event. And therefore, he was able to look at the event live and to see where everyone was up to in the dinner. And therefore, they could communicate and let the dinner know that Moshe Levi would be there in good time. Now, along the journey, all of a sudden, the passenger who had been very quiet, sitting next to the driver, Moshe Levi's in the back, he suddenly said that he needed the toilet. Okay, and having needed the toilet, he gets out the car, and Moshe Levi is panicking because, of course, every second counts. And if every second counts, then how's he going to get to the dinner on time? And lo and behold, when he gets out the car, so the driver says to Moshe Levi, listen, this guy, he's been through a lot. I just want to let you know why he's so quiet. He's just got divorced. He's on the way back, and he's feeling very, very, very low, very depressed about his situation. So Moshe Levi, he gets back into the car, this passenger, and Moshe Levi is thinking to himself, should he say something? Should he not say something? What should he do? Should he ignore it? And sure enough, Moshe Levi, being Moshe Levi, very charismatic character, he starts to tell loads of stories and jokes, and he's upbeat and charismatic, and the passenger doesn't say a word. They get to the venue. Moshe Levi thanks the driver and thanks them both, runs out and goes to give his speech. Doesn't think anything more of it. At the end of the day, this was the big moment, the speech. A few days later, I think it was the next day, he got called by the brother of the passenger. And he says, I want to tell you, you don't know what you did. I don't know what you did, but you did something incredible for my brother. My brother was so low. He didn't know how he was going to carry on. He was just, he just got divorced. He was in a place of tremendous darkness and no hope, and everything was very pessimistic. And he was struggling with depression. And then you got in this car, and unwittingly you lifted his spirits, and he came back and he was sharing the stories and the jokes that you said. He was upbeat, he was hopeful, he was optimistic. And Moshe Levi, in telling this story, apparently I heard it third hand, he said, we think it's the big moments in life. I was going for the dinner, right? But in fact, having broken down, got a lift from somebody that I hadn't seen for 20 years, and then this passenger happened to be in the car, right? It was, in fact, the Almighty had orchestrated created this whole thing just so that I could really be able to offer support and, positively encourage this young man who was going through a divorce. So, Aaron the high priest, he saw this great ceremony, right, with all the pomp and pageantry of the inauguration of the tabernacle. He had every right to be depressed, to be dejected, right, to be crestfallen, and yet the Almighty says to him, your role is greater than theirs, because you are going to shine light through the lives of people throughout the course of the generations. It may not be in the same public way that the inauguration takes place, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. Friends, that is the lesson, a phenomenal lesson for us to take away from the beginning of this week's Parsha. We're all familiar, and we see, and we're more and more encouraged that it's all about the public persona and the image and the PR and the way that we appear, the way we look, and what do people think of us, and how many likes and how many views. And it's all absolute rubbish, because sometimes in moments that seem rather, ordinary and innocuous, the most extraordinary things can happen. We can touch people's lives in ways that we can never imagine, and bring the light that Aaron reflected into people's lives. So please just remember that it's not about the way that we contribute and help other people in their lives. With that, we'll conclude for today with Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even as I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. I'm going to recite a memorial prayer, which is for those that I have the list. I don't have the full list. The full list was read yesterday, and we'll do it later on as well. Adon Elamim Zachoes Nishmois, Ami Bas Aryeh, Paul Casimir, Yom Yochi ben Moshe Eliezer, Shlomo Yechia ben Moshe Eliezer, Ben Sion ben Yitzchak, Aryeh ben Shimon, Leah Bas Faivo, Avram Mordechai ben Moshe Katna, Shalchol Yelamam, Began Eden Tem Luchasam, Lachim Balarachamim, Yasi Ben Vesesa Kanafab Yolamim, Veyetzo Zaches Nishosam, Adonai Nachlasam, Vianucha Bishlam Shkavam, Venomar, Amen. Lastly, before Shalema, for all those that are unwell, Mishavech, Avsin, Robin, Soviako, Moshe Aaron, David Shlomo, Hivarech, Rapes, Achelim, Babu, Shani, Rispalim, Babu Ram, Bischosakosh, Brochim, Vale, Rachim, Miralech, Melach, Melachosam, Bishlachim, for Shalem, Shmai, Melachol, Vem, Besos, Shacho, Yisrael, Rafus, Nefesh, Fusaku, Hash, Tabakis, Bakri, Venomar, Amen. Wishing everyone well. Have a great day. Keep safe, keep well, and keep inspiring people around you. You have no idea what you're doing